So the thing right now in terms of portfolio, I'm still gambling a little bit by putting a little bit of my portfolio into meme coins specifically. And one thing I would consider is that if Trump wins, all of the tokens that were labeled as security by the SEC in the last 4 years, there's a list of like 67. I think those will get a big pump also, not just meme coin, just simply because I think all those SEC attack on crypto will probably cease if Trump is in power.
So I woke up this morning and I see all kinds of information on Twitter about Kamala Harris and how bad she did on this interview. And it didn't seem like it helped her case in terms of winning the election. I looked at poly markets and it looks like Donald Trump is up to 61.7% versus Kamala Harris at 38.3%. And so a lot of people are saying that the strength of odds for Donald Trump are heavily correlated to Bitcoin's price, although I'm not quite seeing it. I think when it comes to Bitcoin, it doesn't quite matter whether it's Donald Trump or Kamala Harris, although Donald Trump has a lot of great use cases. He is talking about having a Bitcoin reserve, but there's something else that is a lot more correlated than the actual price of Bitcoin and the odds of Donald Trump winning. And here with us to discuss it is Patrick, also known as Crypto Rookies. How are you doing, Patrick?
Doing great.
We're 20 days away from the election, Patrick, and maybe it's Trump, maybe it's Kamala. I mean, does it really matter for the crypto industry?
Yeah, the thing for me, I'm doing slightly different things with my portfolio for this. And there's a few reasons why, but the thing, I think if we cut what happened immediately during the election and whoever wins will have a different impact between the two candidates. And I think what happened more medium and long term will also be a bit different. So I think I'm going to adjust my portfolio in that regard, basically.
So let's talk about the short term, the medium term, and then the long term. In the short term, what do you think will happen if President Trump wins?
For me, because he's really pro-crypto since he's involved in crypto project and he cares a lot about making money, I think he will open the floodgate for himself, but for others as well. So I would expect more of a big pump immediately as he becomes president. The thing, I don't want to get too political here because we may get this show banned. Like freedom of speech in the US is basically dead at this point. If he wins, or regardless of whoever wins, I think the other party may not accept the result. If Trump end up actually winning, there will be a lot of volatility. That's what I would expect because of what will happen next in terms of backlash, in terms of the other political party and whoever lose. I think it's not going to be over.
There's definitely going to be like an initial reaction, right? Whether it be to the upside or to the downside, maybe perhaps even due to some uncertainty, or if there is some dispute around who truly won, perhaps we might see the market go down in the short term. But in the long term, if you can see, since 2020, the amount of printing that the United States have done is enormous. And so when you compare that to the global market supply, I mean, it seems like it's very heavily correlated with Bitcoin. Would you agree?
That's the one chart and the one data point that I think is the most correlated that I've ever seen. And I think what's interesting here is that the global M2 supply has a 10 weeks lead. Like if they print and they give it to banks or big corporation to save them from bankruptcy, or they just buy bonds, it will take time to reach the market and the retail users. So I think that's probably where the average of that 10-week lead come in. And because this is worldwide, maybe some country it ended up going faster to users, to the population, but definitely is the most correlated thing I've seen. The uptick to the global M2 supply started several weeks ago. So I think the upward price movement where we're seeing now might be entirely explained just through that. Maybe it has nothing to do with Trump winning.
Well, it sounds like in the short term there will be uncertainty, but with the money supply, enormous amount of money supply that we have globally. I think that bodes extremely well for Bitcoin. Although the altcoin market, I'm not so sure. I think there's a lot of people think that Trump is better for altcoins than Kamala. So how are you positioning your portfolio, Patrick, so that way you're prepared for both cases?
I think in this particular case, regardless of who wins, I think will be good for Bitcoin because at this point it's legally accepted in the US. But I think if Kamala win, I think their administration proved in the past 4 years that they're really anti-crypto. I don't think that's going to change entirely. I think they will be more crypto friendly, but for crypto that have the ability to for the US government to retain control. So I think they will push some sort of CBDC. Maybe it's not going to be named the CBDC, but it will have the same control aspect. So I don't think it's going to be good for altcoin if it's Kamala that wins. I would expect maybe a dump if she wins. And then saying, regardless of Trump being in the lead right now, I think it's far from being over. I would not be surprised if Kamala win. I'm keeping a bit of altcoin in my portfolio, but I would not go too heavy. I will be focusing a lot more on Bitcoin, and I will expect some massive volatility, even though that there might be an initial massive pump, simply because I would expect the other losing side to cause trouble. I think the volatility could be pretty extreme. So I'm making sure that I don't take excessive leverage on my bet on Bitcoin. And if it ends up that it's Kamala that win, I think I would not expect a massive pump early on, but I would expect a stable growth that might be actually even superior than if it's Trump that wins. Because even though he's very pro-crypto, I think from what my perspective is, and I could be wrong, you're from the US, maybe you can help me with that, but I think he's going to be a lot more into cost cutting with government fat and all that stuff. So I don't think he's going to print as much money as if it's Kamala that win. I think in the past 4 years, it's been pretty irresponsible how much they printed. So I think they're going to continue printing like crazy to fight and like all the economic situation in the US. So I would expect the growth of Bitcoin to be leveraged against the debasement of US currency from that printing of money. So I think Bitcoin will probably end up growing faster over the next 12 months if she wins. And I think that's a weird thing to say because she's not as pro-crypto as Trump, but it's just that if it's true that the chart is so highly correlated to the global M2 supply, I think she's going to print more.
Let's look a little bit closer into the last elections, because last elections, Trump versus Biden, there was also a large dispute about whether or not it was fair. Trump was irate about the elections. And let's see what the kind of an impact it had on the market. Would have been around this time period right here. The January 6th event, that was around here, right before the peak. And then after that, it came back down. I mean, it went as low as 29,000 and then came back up.
Yeah, I think around the 27th of December. Oh, November. Yeah, that's it. This one, if you measure that, I think it might be bigger than we think. So yeah, a 12% drop. It's not crazy, but I think regardless of who win this time, I would expect something similar and maybe of higher proportion, to be honest.
So we're saying that regardless of who wins, definitely hold on to your Bitcoin, but everything else, there's going to be some nuances. Well, even Ethereum should be fine, right? Because we already have the Ethereum ETF. So under Kamala, it still might do well. In fact, you can argue that if the other altcoins don't do well, maybe perhaps that might be a case for Ethereum to go up.
Yeah, because there will be less bleeding. So the thing right now in terms of portfolio, I'm still gambling a little bit by putting a little bit of my portfolio into meme coins specifically. And one thing I would consider is that if Trump wins, all of the tokens that were labeled as security by the SEC in the last 4 years, there's a list of like 67. I think those will get a big pump also, not just meme coin, just simply because I think all those SEC attack on crypto will probably cease if Trump is in power. But I think if Kamala win, then that might actually go down. So I think there's a way to hedge a portfolio to take advantage of that. But I think definitely if Trump win, for me, I would expect a pretty big pump on Bitcoin, but also a much bigger pump on meme coins. and those SEC labeled securities, I guess.
So are
It's
you
hard to.
keeping some dry powder on the side in case Kamala wins and things start to drop? Like, are you going to be buying the dip? And if you are you buying things that you know are going to stick around for at least 4 years? Because Kamala, if she's going to be in power for 4 years, and if you are under the assumption that she's going to suppress the rest of the altcoin market, then is anything else going to survive? If you think about 4 years ago, I mean, what's doing really well that's been around for 4 years besides Ethereum, Binance?
Yeah, I think things don't survive that much, but the bull market is still underway for the next 12 months. So I think for me, I, right now most of my portfolio is in meme coin. Sadly to say, I used to be very much against them, but right now it performs so much better than everything else. It's kind of crazy. But I
I
stick to
think there's
the.
a lot of people that are having that realization that are almost embarrassed to admit it. That, yes, I'm in meme coins because, they perform better. At the end of the day, that's kind of what you're trying to do, right? If the value of our currency is devaluing, you're trying to hedge against that. Well, Bitcoin is already reached a certain level, and so what's really going to give you that? Memes. And you mentioned something that's very important for the listeners. You mentioned that right now you're gambling with memes, which is
Yeah,
important distinction to make. That don't use money that you can't afford to lose,
exactly.
because there's no guarantee, especially in memes. Get in, get out, and enjoy it, but don't play with any money that you can't afford to lose.
Exactly. And I think in regard to the dry powder, I don't want to keep it aside doing nothing and waiting to click a button. So for me, I'll be issuing limit buy orders, but like for the meme coin, maybe with 40 to 50% drawdown. So the limit buy will trigger if there's a rapid wick, because I don't think we will have time to react if something crazy happen. So you just want to snatch very quickly if something like that happens.
We'll see how everything transpires. In the meantime, Patrick, you've also been working on a few things on your end as well. You've got a project that you've been working on. Can you give us a quick, short, brief overview about what exactly it is?
But thing, I have a software project and then a content project. So the content project, it's more like a community kind of token. So it's not a meme coin. It's not about a joke or any of that stuff. It's about creating media content that the community would enjoy watching. So in this case, it's called Crypto Beauties. So the goal is to produce a reality TV show where we bring a bunch of model girls into like a luxury villa for maybe 3 months. And kind of like Big Brother, we record nonstop and we make a nice video editing. But the goal will be to get them to learn how to trade crypto. And we record the drama that comes out of that. So I think that should resonate well with the crypto industry. And also, it may, if we have some of those models that end up performing really well because of the bull run, I think they have a definite probability of winning big. I think it will be good to empower a lot of other women worldwide to get into tech and crypto overall. So I think that's
I couldn't agree more. I attend a lot of these conferences and always surrounded by a lot of men, and I feel like our industry needs a different perspective. And so more women is better for
yeah.
the overall industry. I would agree. Patrick, thanks again. For those that are watching, if you like this video, please consider subscribing to the channel, give it a like, and make sure to follow Patrick along on all of his stuff. He puts out amazing content on X. And until next time.